Chapter 3. I can hear a fire going, but it's far away. The sound of waves crashing against a rocky shore fills my ears. The sand scrapes against my tentacles as they glide across the beach. I am hunting for creatures that stray too close to the shore. As I hide in the surf, I look up at the stars rippling above me, and I scheme for the day they will be mine. Something is poking my face. I flail, tangled in my pack, the same one I'd been half snuggling, half using as a pillow. Blinking blearily, I look up to see the deserter leader standing over me, a crooked grin plastered across his face. He's been prodding me with an engraved silver fork, now spinning it through his fingers like a juggler, showing off his best trick. Using his free hand, he wafts a plate of food in front of me enticingly. I try to sit up, groaning against the hangover of mana depletion, a bone-deep exhaustion that leaves me feeling like I hadn't slept or eaten in days. Stretching, I arch my back and let out a satisfied "Blag!" The leader's expression resists my antics. "You auxiliaries are a strange bunch," he mutters, offering me the fork handle first with a flourish. When I reach for it, he doesn't let go immediately, leaning in closer to study my face. "How can you sleep so soundly with that cursed thing in your pack?" I blink at him, caught off guard, but before I can answer, he lets the fork go abruptly, and I stumble backward a bit, barely catching myself. He chuckles, handing me the plate with a smug grin. The food is simple: a cut of freshly cooked meat, a few scavenged tubers, and a fat grilled mushroom. But my stomach doesn't care about presentation. "Thanks for the food," I mumble around a mouthful, shoveling it in with the enthusiasm of a starved animal. As the flavours mix haphazardly in my mouth, I feel the core stirring faintly in my mind, its alien instincts probing at the edges of my awareness, holding approval, hunger, humour. I vaguely note the strangeness of feeling its thoughts without holding it, but I set the sensation aside, too absorbed in my meal to think about it. The leader watches me eat, his expression torn between amusement and mild horror, but at least he waits until my mouth is empty to speak. He looks at me squarely, clearly annoyed to have this conversation. "Look, Sage, you helped my men." He gestures around the group of deserters. Most of them had needed healing, all of whom were now watching my exchange with their leader with undisguised interest. The leader grunts. "Couldn't rob you now, not even if you had anything worth taking besides that cursed stone, anyway." The leader's body shakes for a moment as he fights against a dark memory. "Whatever that thing is, we want no part of it." The leader crooks his head. "The question is, what are you going to do, Sage?" I wipe my mouth with a cloth from my cloak's many pockets, taking my time before answering. "Well," I say, leaning back, "first, I'm headed to the Crooked Lantern Inn down the way." I glance at him with a raised brow. Hopefully they'll have some work I can do for a few more days' rations. His expression shifts, a flicker of guilt crossing his face, but it's gone as quickly as it came. And after that, off to Fallowhole to start my life over again. I take a breath, meeting his gaze. "You know, you guys could come with me. Hire on as caravan guards or something. You don't have to live like this." The leader laughs, shaking his head. "Sage, not even with your help can we do that. You are not the first person we have held up." He sighs. "No. The only reason we haven't been caught and hung is 'cause our legion was scattered." He gets a faraway look for a moment. The countryside is littered with deserters, Sage. It was bad. The leader grinds his teeth. "Those noble bastards, they promised us that we would be fighting to protect our homes." He stands suddenly and begins pacing in front of the smouldering fire, his voice rising with anger. Only 3 months on the march. He clenches his fists. They sent my unit, full of greenies, just like Tavian here. He waves his hand towards the young man whose foot I had started with last night. Tavian is startled at being called out, nearly dropping something he was holding, and gives me a shy smile. The leader continues his rant. Right to the front lines, we were nothing but meat to them. A wall meant to slow those horrible things? We were just a distraction so that the real forces could get in place. He spits into the fire. We can't go back, Sage. It's not right. I wince, the truth of his words cutting deep. I've been in those planning rooms where the nobles and heroes tallied lives like inventory and decisions about supplies were made with cold efficiency. I give him a moment to catch his breath. Then softly, I say, "You're right. You can't go back." I pause. Nor should you. He stops pacing, his expression one of surprise, clearly not expecting me to agree with him. I go on, "It's not right wasting a man's life for the pursuit of wealth or pride." I sigh. I would have left the Ox too if I hadn't felt so stuck. So many more would have died. I smile at the leader. What they did to you, to all of us. It's not right. I gesture around at his men. If you keep living like this, it'll kill you just the same. I hold the leader's gaze, demanding honesty from him. If you won't come to the inn with me, then what's your plan? He runs a hand through his hair. We'll manage? His voice quieter, now trying to convince himself. His gaze softens as he looks at his men. Maybe we'll head deeper into the woods, find some old ruin to hole up in, build a place for us, for people who need somewhere to go. The hesitation in his tone is faint but unmistakable. We'll manage, somehow. Suddenly his resolve firms, and he offers me a hand up, pulling me to my feet with surprising strength. "You're a strange one, Sage," he says with a crooked grin. "But maybe that's not a bad thing." With a sharp whistle, he signals his men to pack up. They gather around him, casting glances in my direction as they fall in line. Before he disappears into the forest, he turns back one last time. "Tau's luck in your new life, Sage. Maybe you'll manage to do some good out there." He nods and takes his leave, followed by his men. The last to go is Tavian. He shuffles over to me, fidgeting nervously, before holding out his hand. I tilt my head, curious, as he drops a small wooden figurine into my open palm. I turn the carving over in my hands, marvelling at the detail. It's a wonderfully stylized crow, the tiny grooves of its wings, the proud tilt of its head. I murmur little appreciations as I examine it. Tavian salutes me, his shy smile growing bolder. "Thanks, Sage. I won't forget what you've done for me." Before I can reply, he turns and runs to catch up with his unit. As he disappears into the trees, I tuck the little bird into my pocket, hoping they had a brighter future ahead of them.